Well, hi, and thanks for stopping by the Pellets and Pistons Airgun channel. Today we've got the Browning Buckmark air pistol, and we're going to put it on the bench and we're going to see what we can do about correcting a really poor trigger. I guess they call these lawyer triggers because they eliminate the possibility of a lawsuit due to a hair trigger, but at some point it gets to the point that it's ridiculous, and the trigger pull on these Browning pistols and the Umarex Ruger Mark IV are pretty much the same. They're just atrocious from the factory, and they definitely need a little bit of work. This thing's, I don't have a trigger pull gauge, but I'm going to guess that this thing's probably in the 5 to 6 pound pull range. It might even be a little bit more than that, which when you're trying to aim a pistol, it gets really hard because you're trying to pull that trigger and your gun's shaking all over the place. So we need to lighten it up a little bit so that we can get a little more accurate shot out of it. It's a good little rifle barrel. It's a pretty consistent gun as far as the output goes. So I expect that, 10 yards or so, this pistol should do pretty well, but it's so hard to shoot it the way it is. So we're going to take it inside, we're going to put it on a bench, and we're going to take and do a trigger job on it. And I thought I'd bring you guys along and show you what we do. So stick around, this ought to be fun, and thanks again for stopping by the Pellets and Pistons Airgun channel. So the first step will be to remove the grips from the pistol. There's only 2 screws that hold the grips on. Once those are out of the way, you can kind of slide the grip off the gun. There's a couple of projections on the opposite side that the grip has to be lifted off of in order to get it to slide off of the grip frame. There's 2 screws on the forward end of the grip frame, and then an Allen screw on the top rear of the pistol running through the Picatinny rail. All 3 of these must be removed in order to separate the grip frame from the action of the pistol. Right here you can see the sear, and this is the surface that we're going to be polishing today. Each time the trigger is pulled, the sear is allowed to drop, which disengages with the piston and allows the piston to slide forward, pushing the air behind the pellet and firing the pellet out the barrel. There's 2 pins in the grip frame. They need to be driven out from right to left. These are knurled pins, and the knurl is on the opposite side, so you want to make sure you drive them out in the proper direction. Once those are out of the way, you can push the whole trigger mechanism up and out of the gun. The trigger itself will stay in the grip frame, but the trigger mechanism will lift out of the gun. Now, I removed that safety lever. I recommend doing that. It'll give you better access to the sear. It's just one simple screw to take it out of there. Now you'll notice in the grip frame below where the sear rides, there's a spring, which is your return spring. It pushes the sear up and engages it with the piston. That spring is pretty tough. It's got a lot of tension on it, and I'm thinking that lightening that spring and finding something a little better might lighten the trigger pull as well. You can see here how difficult it is for me to compress the spring. Okay, I found one that's considerably lighter, so I'm going to go ahead and install that instead of the original. I wanted to show you this. This is the bearing surface on the piston where the sear engages, and it's in such tight quarters that there's really not much I can do to get in there and polish it, so I'm just going to leave it alone. Again, this is a $50 pistol, and the trigger system's pretty crude anyway, so I'm just going to take what I can get by polishing the sear and not really worry about this surface here. So again, here's the trigger group out of the gun. This is the sear, and right here is the face of the sear that I'm going to polish. We're going to start by stoning. Now that it's chucked up in a vise and nice and steady, I can stone across here. Now I'm going to caution against rounding this edge or changing the profile of that edge as well. You have to kind of take your time and be pretty careful. I'm not being as careful here as I normally would be, but again, it's a $50 gun with a pretty cheap mechanism for a trigger. Once you've honed all the imperfections out of it with the stone, you can go ahead and polish it nice and bright and clean with a little rouge. I'm using a Dremel tool here. I'll just buff that up a little bit. Alright, and here's the surface all shiny and bright. It's a little bit round. I probably could have done a better job if I'd had spent a little more time at it, but for this gun I'd say that's adequate. We're going to go ahead and replace the safety lever. It's one tiny little screw with a flange on it, holds that in place. The lever itself has a little shoulder that it sits over, and then the screw goes right through that shoulder and anchors it. We're going to go ahead and install that lighter trigger spring, or sear spring I guess is a better term for it. We're going to drop the trigger group back into the gun. It helps if you engage the forward portion first and then sort of rock it down into position. And once it's in the proper position, you can go ahead and reinstall those pins that hold it in place. And again, they're knurled pins. You want to put them in from the left side and then tap them down until they're flush. Now we can go ahead and install the grip frame on the action. Make sure that the cocking rod is engaged with the piston where it needs to be before you sock everything down. And then it should just snap back into position. Go ahead and insert those forward grip frame screws. Once the forward screws are in, it's time to reinstall the Allen bolt, which runs through the top of the Picatinny rail and into the grip frame, securing the rear of the pistol. The only thing left now is to reassemble the grip assembly, and we're ready to test fire the gun. Okay, so it's the moment of truth. We've went and done the trigger job on the Browning Buckmark air pistol, and now it's time to see if we were able to at least make it a little bit more manageable, get it down from that 5 or 6 pound pull weight to something in the range of 2 or 3 pounds. So let's see if we were able to do that. It's like I said before, the trigger was just atrocious, really hard to shoot. Now let's see if we got any better. Yeah, I'd say we got it down to about 3 pounds, maybe a little bit more. Again, it's a pretty crude trigger system. I don't know how much you can do with it. We lightened it up by putting a lighter spring in it, and then we polished the sear surface. We did not polish the portion of the piston where the sear engages because it's so tough to get in there that it was pretty much difficult to even imagine trying to polish that. So I left it alone and just polished the sear on the trigger system itself. And let's see, yeah, we even rang my little bell. So that's about 25 yards. So I'd say that's a little more manageable. It's pretty easy to shoot now, and I think the more I use it, the better it'll get. So at any rate, I'd call this a success. And I'd say that the trigger pull on this gun is a lot more manageable now, a little more acceptable, and I think I'll have a lot more fun plinking around with this pistol in the future. So I want to thank you folks for stopping by the Pellets and Pistons Airgun channel. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and by all means, hit the bell if you'd like to be reminded of future videos. Thanks again, folks. Have a great day.